welcome into Fantasy Focus Football. Today's show is presented by Geico. Switch to Geico and see all the ways that you could save. Field, Stephania, and Daniel hanging out with you on this wonderful Tuesday afternoon. Our buddy Kyle.
Tuesday afternoon.
Well, Tuesday by the
in
time
London.
people listen to
it's
it.
It's Tuesday afternoon in London. For all of our British listeners.
It's Tuesday afternoon.
Very much the morning.
You're right. I forgot
people.
it. Our buddy Kyle hanging out with us in the YouTube chat. Kyle, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well. We got a full crew. Dan S. leading the charge in the YouTube chat as always. So
I love Dan
to
S.
see it.
Yeah, I love it. If you're an audio-only listener, we love that. We appreciate it. If you ever want to jump in, Kyle's always in our YouTube chat talking to the people that are in there, having a ton of fun. So check that out. Guys, we are on to week 4.
We sure are.
You know what?
Are we? I'm still recovering.
Well, I don't think you're the only one.
In more ways than one.
Right now, I'm going to say this, and I'm going to jump in. Right now, there are a lot of teams that I think are looking to turn the page on to week 4. But right now, the Denver Broncos specifically are on some long and lonesome highway east of Omaha trying to figure out how the heck they become the players that they are on paper for us in comparison to what we've seen from them in the game. Russell Wilson, quarterback 14 in week 1, quarterback 24 in week 2. You know what he did in week 3?
Worse than that?
Quarterback 28. He's going backwards. Looking back at this Sunday night football game, this is not good. Only 22 rushing yards on the season. Russell Wilson and this Broncos offense looks really bad. I'm going to have a problem starting him, I think, coming into week 4. And I don't think it's even a tough conversation with the way that this offense has looked.
Well, the only reason why it's a slightly tough conversation, Daniel, is one of the themes of week 4. Actually, not that. Is one of the themes of week 4 is good quarterbacks and bad matchups. Guys like Patrick, I'm not saying you're not starting him, but just as an example, right? Patrick Mahomes plays against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, right? Like there are a handful of quarterbacks that you would normally consider locks to start. You might not. Matthew Stafford draws the 49ers. Kirk Cousins draws the Saints as an example. There are a lot of quarterbacks that even if they're not must starts, they're maybe fringe plays like Kirk Cousins who are not streaming options this week because of the matchup that they have. But let's talk about Russell Wilson. What was the path that we talked about all offseason to potential top 5 quarterback season was that Russell Wilson has great receivers around him. Beyond that, prior to last year, 2021, he had averaged 500 rushing yards per season. He's got 22, as you mentioned. The good news is that 17 of them came on Sunday night, but there's no design run elements of this offense right now.
No.
And as far as great receivers go, he's got one. Courtland Sutton's good. Very good. The guy's super talented, trusted target, that much is for sure. I'm not sure where we're at right now on Jerry Jeudy, though. He clearly has talent. Guy's fast, he's shifty, he's good after the catch, but he's not producing. And we had an excuse last year, right, because quarterback play was so bad. We had an excuse the year before. Quarterback play was so bad. Now you've got Russell Wilson. He's not producing. And Jerry Jeudy, like Russell Wilson, and especially Jerry Jeudy, is somebody that if you have him on your roster right now, he has to earn his way back into your lineup. He's not anywhere close to a start this week for me. I know the matchup is better against the Raiders, but I've got him inside that wide receiver 5 category, low 40s for my Jerry Jeudy week 4 rank.
Yeah, a couple things. Jerry Jeudy, in his defense for this week, was hurt. Like, I actually thought there was a good chance he wouldn't play. So I kind of take this week as a bit of a wash. Hopefully he gets better. Russell Wilson, we told you not to start him. We didn't know he'd be that awful, but we did recommend against starting him. I had to start him in our War Room League because it's a 16-team league, so I'm suffering with the rest of you. But I also think, the 49ers defense might make the week 3 a bit of a wash also for Russell Wilson. I'm looking forward to the matchup against the Raiders because if you can't do it here, then when can you do it?
Yeah, it's just concerning though because the idea of trading Russell Wilson to Denver was that you'd have a matchup-proof offense that every week they could dominate. The operation, and I know that Nathaniel Hackett's been the target of a lot of criticism. I think a healthy portion of that has been fair, but this offensive operation right now inspires very little confidence. There's very little that they're doing right now that when I watch them relative to other offenses that look like they're efficient and creatively run, strikes a bunch of confidence in me. So Russell Wilson sort of on that borderline of a top 12-ish quarterback for this week, even against the Raiders, but it has not been nearly the start to this marriage that we thought. And a reminder, they just paid him $49 million per year on a 5-year extension.
Yep. And Fields, you mentioned the wide receivers. I have Courtland Sutton as a top 20 wide receiver this
awesome.
week.
He's great.
Jerry Jeudy around the wide receiver 40 mark, just like you. So I think he's the guy that you're looking at. These running backs as well, really quickly before we talk about 49ers. they're splitting time here still. We're not watching either one of them really establish themselves as the guy from a fantasy perspective in this offense, which is what we're looking for. It's not about the NFL. It's about, for us, fantasy managers. They're splitting time.
Javonte Williams is good.
Of course he is.
He's really good. Problem is Melvin Gordon's too good.
Yes, he is.
And I know that Melvin Gordon, again, draws criticism because he's not Javonte Williams in terms of overall skill set right now. But I don't know where Melvin Gordon ranks. But, like, if you put him on a bunch of other rosters, he'd be the best back on that roster. I don't think it's close, right? Like, there are a lot of teams that could use themselves a Melvin Gordon right now.
Yeah, and he can catch the ball. Like he's
a good receiver. He's
all
a good
around,
finisher at the goal line.
all around back.
He's everything. So
They're
and
gonna
even Mike
split.
Boone's getting some snaps right now. So Javonte Williams will remain the highest ranked running back for the Broncos. But what I thought coming into the season was that maybe the only way that Melvin Gordon would carry value weekly would be if he was the only guy that was getting goal line work. There's more value here because he's being used in the passing game, and Russell Wilson, Melvin Gordon, college teammates, that trust should not be overlooked. Gordon's playing a bigger role than I think a lot of people forecasted. Maybe even the Broncos themselves. He sat there in free agency for like a month and a half before they brought him back to a deal worth $2 million.
Yeah. We talked about that gap, that draft day gap between Javonte Williams and Melvin Gordon now going into week 4. Feels like it should have been quite a bit smaller than what it was.
Melvin Gordon visited the Ravens this offseason.
Yeah, I was just going to say it was the Ravens.
If they wish they had him right now. And I know J.K. Dobbins is coming back, but based off what they got from Kenyon Drake and Mike Davis before J.K. Dobbins returned, look good there.
All right, let's talk about the San Francisco 49ers as Jimmy Garoppolo does his best Men in Hats impression, Stephania?
It was
safety
some
dance.
Safety dance.
Yeah, I knew the reference.
She's just totally even.
I'm ignoring it.
Yeah, nothing.
I'm totally ignoring it.
What are you gonna do?
What are you gonna do? Right? What are you gonna do? It was not his best performance. I'm sure he would want it back.
I will say this. One thing.
Here's what I'm worried about. I'm worried about the loss of Trent Williams. Oh boy, am I worried about that, because I that does not help Jimmy Garoppolo, who sometimes in the past has struggled with decision making, waits a bit too long. You don't have that protection.
It's gonna be tough.
Yikes.
Yeah. Right now, the 49ers, I think, have 3 players that you're probably focused in on for fantasy purposes, right? Deebo Samuel, still going to start him. He's getting his customary rushing opportunities. Plus, he had 8 targets on Sunday night. That's good. I would actually prefer, as I keep saying, I would prefer him to have between 8 and 10 targets a week and not as much rushing, just because those targets are so valuable for a guy as good after the catch as he is. I think Jeff Wilson, who had 75 rushing yards and got involved in the passing game too, is like a low-end RB2, maybe a strong flex consideration. They're going to have to, I think, continue to run the football effectively because A, the 49ers, and B, to Stephania's point, no Trent Williams. They play the Rams on Monday night, certainly a defense that can generate some pressure. And then George Kittle, I know it wasn't a monster debut for him, 4 catches, 28 yards, but he got 5 targets. There's like 10 tight ends a week that you can count on getting 5 targets a game. Kittle's one of them, and he'll have the explosion game at some point. You may not know when it's coming, but he's George Kittle. Most importantly, stayed on the field the entire game, came out of it healthy. He's going to be a top 10, more like a top 8 tight end consideration as long as he's on the field.
I don't like Brandon Ayuk as a flex this week, but I want to see how he continues to develop his rapport with Jimmy Garoppolo with the way it started here this year.
There was
bunch.
very few
I just want to
catches
see how that
relative to
develops.
targets. But I think, look, he's a good player. He's an evolved player, and I think Brandon Ayuk is going to become at least stay a favored target with about this amount of targets.
Right. Ayuk is a good example of a player that there are others who were drafted way higher who you feel like you have to play because of name value that I think at this point need to be have to earn their way back into your lineup. Good example I just mentioned, Jerry Jeudy. Another one that comes to mind, DJ Moore. You can replace those players potentially with the likes of somebody of Brandon Ayuk, who, not that he's been massively targeted every single week and has been a no doubt about it must start, but 8 targets this past week, first round pick just a couple of years ago, had a monster stretch at the end of 2020. He's an example of a guy that if you have him and this role cements itself going forward, might wind up being your wide receiver 3 as opposed to guys that we thought were potentially going to be your wide receiver 1 or wide receiver 2 and DJ Moore and also Jerry Jeudy and a couple of others that come to mind. Read more about that in Field Pass on Thursday.
Oh, hey, there you go. All right, let's spin it forward to Monday Night Football. As last night we watched the Cowboys
How about him?
How about those Cowboys take on the Giants, coming up with a 23-16 win? Cooper Rush, 21 for 31 with 215 yards and a touchdown. I'll tell you this, Cooper Rush was actually fine for this offense. There wasn't anything that I felt like he was holding them back. In all honesty,
and he's been awesome.
For what he is, he's been great for them.
He's been great. I have so much respect for the performance he's put on the past 2 weeks. I was down on Cooper Rush, and I'm not afraid. I'm not going to try to tell you that I thought otherwise. I thought this was a bleak situation for the Cowboys.
Me too.
Back-to-back wins. Listen, they're not beating world beaters, right? Like beating the Giants were a nice 2-0 story, but the Giants are probably a team that's in the bottom half of the NFL for sure. Maybe the bottom third by the time it's all said and done, right? Yeah. But gritty win, important win, impressed by him, and for our purposes, he's kept the offense afloat with one player in particular, which is CeeDee Lamb, who was great last night, even on a night when he dropped a wide open, probable touchdown catch.
I was losing it. I needed.
People in fantasy were for sure losing. He was the most critical of himself, though. He talked about it,
which is right, and that's fair. I needed 40 points from Saquon and CeeDee last night to be able to beat somebody. So like him dropping that, I was like, you've got to be kidding me, CeeDee Lamb. Come on. But let's really quickly talk about these running backs because we've been looking at both Ezekiel Elliott and Tony Pollard. They've been splitting time, and they both, again, looked really good in this backfield.
The run game entirely looked better. Like, if you look at it from the football perspective, I think that's why the Cowboys were able to do what they were able to do, because they had this balance with the run game and the passing game, and they used the backs in a complementary way that I think they've been wanting to do, and we haven't seen it work. Tony Pollard definitely is the flashier guy. He definitely gets to the edge. He's got the speed, whatever. Zeke is the between the tackles guy. Sometimes you're going to have good runs from him. Sometimes he's not going to go very far. By the way, if you watch Tony Pollard try and run up the middle, it was basically the same net result. My biggest concern with Zeke is the passing game is non-existent, and I'm hoping
it's worse than non-existent because he has negative 5 yards on the season.
Yeah, and actually for both of them, 0 catches for Tony Pollard last night as well. So
yeah,
I can't cry too much a foul about the offense because again, it was Cooper Rush starting, and they both I thought ran the football effectively. Pollard still has more burst, but Zeke got the goal line opportunity and finished off the drive, which I think he's more likely to get more often than not. I still value Zeke higher than Pollard, but Zeke's sort of like a, low end RB2 / strong flex, and I think Pollard more in that low end flex play.
Yep, I think that's fair.
Here's the thing that I will be interested to see when Dak returns, which I think could be in a couple weeks. Will the run game look the same? Because actually the run game has not looked as good with Dak in there. So hopefully they'll work on balancing it out, and that will offload the pressure on Dak as well.
Yeah. We talked about CeeDee Lamb and how awesome he looked. 8 catches on 12 targets, 87 yards and a touchdown. Dropped another big 50-plus yard touchdown that would have been awesome. However, he looks great, right? Not worried about him at this point. I feel like I'm starting CeeDee Lamb.
100%. You're starting him with confidence. He's got 11 targets. Actually, 11, 12 is the number of targets he's had in each game this season.
What you're looking for.
Volume's awesome. Passes the eye test always. I thought the value would drop to like a lower end wide receiver 2 for CeeDee Lamb with Cooper Rush. And I think it's more like a strong end wide receiver 2 with Cooper Rush. If they keep targeting Lamb as much as they have, I would think the only consideration, Stephania, is that we could see Michael Gallup sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I think next week feels like the right time. He practiced more this week. This was the first week that he was really back in full practice. I think there was just a feeling he wasn't quite ready yet, and that's again, I remind people, it's only been 8 months since he had the ACL injury, and there's no reason to rush him back. I do feel like another week of live practice, and he'll be getting back in there. Good matchup. Time for him against Washington. That could be a nice time for him to step back in.
We've watched Noah Brown, who I don't think any of us would have picked as the number 2 Cowboys wide receiver up until this point, but he's actually looked pretty good. I don't see him as somebody that I need to be able to be targeting at this point with the return of potentially Michael Gallup.
That's the big thing here, is that he was probably only a deep league consideration, right? A 14 or 16 team where you just sort of needed somebody because your bodies were impacted. But now with Michael Gallup likely to return sooner than later, I think you're probably looking at a player who is nothing more than a bench stash in a deeper league.
Yep. All right, with those Giants, last night on Monday Tailgate, I said I was really excited to see what Saquon Barkley looks like. 24 touches in each of the first 2 games.
So happy for him.
And he looked awesome.
Yeah.
Oh
really
my
happy
gosh.
for him.
Isn't it just more fun to watch the game when Saquon has that explosiveness back and looks like the Saquon that we knew before last year?
And by the way, I mean, if you saw him in his post-game conversation, he said all the things that we've been saying, talking about the difference in how he's feeling this year, or not post-game, it was pre-game actually, when they were on the field doing the interview, and he talked about the way he was running, and so I just thought that was very honest to him. Appreciated that.
Yeah, he's looked great, and right now in a year in which running backs have been hard to size up, Saquon's been about as steady as they come. There are so few running backs that have either had the requisite volume or have had the requisite production to be considered a lock as a top 10 running back. Saquon's that right now. Back-to-back games, as you mentioned, Daniel, up over 20 touches for Saquon Barkley. He's getting involved in the passing game. He had 4 catches again last night for 45 yards. Slow start on the ground. He played much better on the ground in the second half. Found the end zone. They are barely playing anybody else at running back besides Saquon Barkley. In a year in which we've got guys like Alvin Kamara struggling, and Derrick Henry had a slow start until he got going last week, and Dalvin Cook is hurt, and DeAndre Swift is hurt. More to come on those guys in just a couple of minutes. Saquon Barkley has kind of emerged as one of the crown jewels of the running back class right now. You would make a case for him as probably a top 3 option right now as things presently stand.
He is my RB1 heading into week 4 with everything that he has done. Listen, when I'm looking at Christian McCaffrey and Jonathan Taylor and the way that those guys are amazing.
Yeah.
But the volume that Saquon has gotten in this offense and the way that he's actually taken advantage of it. At this point, I feel like I have to trust it with how everything has worked out. Stephania, as much as we love all of that from Saquon, one of the things that was tough about last night's game was watching Sterling Shepard get hurt, unfortunately, and you feel for him.
Here he is coming back from the Achilles injury. We talked about how great he looked and how finally, we're starting to see that these guys who are coming back from Achilles repairs, it is not the end of their career, right? One of the things you worry about when you come off a major injury is there is a higher incidence of subsequent injuries. Whether, you can get into the weeds of why that may or may not be related, but ultimately last night you saw him, it looked like he was slowly decelerating, kind of gave way, and the Giants, Jordan Ronan actually, who reports on the Giants for us, saying that they think it's potentially a season-ending injury. So we're waiting to find out more.
MetLife turf, man. I don't know. I know there's just been way too many injuries there for me to think
home
that
and visitors.
It makes me think that there is something more than coincidence with the turf there at MetLife Stadium, because if you watch the play, we've seen harmless injuries. This was I don't even know what the extreme version of harmless is, right? But he was literally running in a straight line. He wasn't planting. He wasn't
jogging
turning
in a straight line. Yeah.
And sometimes that's when those things happen, right? Because you're actually not, the muscle, you're not as tuned in. It's like a casual step, and then there's a misstep, and your body doesn't react quite as quickly.
Oh man, I just feel terrible for him.
It was awful.
I feel terrible for the guy, and
he was looking good too. I mean, I loved being able to watch him.
He was running really well.
He was running well. Daniel Jones, he looked like Daniel Jones' preferred target. I don't know who Daniel Jones is going to throw the football.
No, I mean, right now there's no Giant besides Saquon Barkley. You can come anywhere close to starting for week 4. I mean, the next men up in the wide receiver room, literally, I mean, Richie James.
Yep.
David Sills V, who was a former quarterback in college and then turned wide receiver. Kenny Golladay, who, despite his massive contract, can barely get on the field.
It didn't look, if you saw it last night, you saw why Dable has been talking about earning the position every week. People are going to have to earn it. And then Kadarius Toney, he's healthy, he's not. He's healthy, he's not.
Right. Yeah. Finally, maybe if Kadarius Toney plays, they might have a choice, but they have to play. We'll see. Yeah. So right now it's a wasteland. It's a minefield. Stay away from Giants pass catchers.
Saquon is going to get a ton of volume.
And poor Daniel Jones. I'm worried about him too.
24 pressures last night. 24 from the Cowboys.
Record breaking.
Yeah, literally. Yeah,
I know.
All right, Stephania, let's look ahead to week 4 and break down some of the injuries that we unfortunately saw here in week 3. Get everybody ready for Waiver Wire. And we're going to start with Tua Tagovailoa in Miami, because it looked like, if you watched this game, it looked like Tua went down and potentially had a concussion when he hit his head on the turf. And then it comes out afterwards, and there was a lot of reporting as to whether it was a concussion, whether it wasn't, if it was, about something else. So what do we know about Tua?
Yeah, I think it's important to go through the steps here just so that people hear sort of, the process, right? Because you have the things you can view on TV, and we saw Tua hit his head on the turf. And then subsequently, as he was walking, he appeared to stumble, lose his balance, went to the ground. You saw the medical staff come and take him off the field. They took him directly to the locker room for a full evaluation. Notice didn't stop in the blue tent, went back to the locker room. And the people who accompanied him were the team physician, one of the athletic training staff, and then the unaffiliated neurotrauma consultant who is there, who is not affiliated with the team and is there specifically to help evaluate those type of injuries. In that time, and especially going into halftime, they took all this time to go through the complete neurological testing that is part of the concussion evaluation process. They are also talking to the player, and the player at that time told them that he had hurt his back and his ankle when he got twisted up on a play near the goal line. They determined that his stumbling was not neurologically induced. There is a specific line in the concussion protocol that talks about gross motor instability, and if it is neurologically induced, the player's to be removed. They believed that it wasn't. He was allowed to return to the game. And then yesterday, Mike McDaniel said that he would not have practiced if they had had a real practice. They have a Thursday night game, so it was more of a walkthrough because of back and ankle soreness, and he is currently not in the concussion protocol. The other piece to this is that the NFLPA requested a review of what happened after Tua was injured. This is not completely abnormal. All these things are documented and they are in place for the purpose of a review. And the NFLPA and the NFL will look jointly. They will talk to every member of the medical staff, the players, coaches, referee, all personnel involved to determine whether all the correct steps were followed. So that's sort of the sum total of where we are. I think with a short turnaround, this is actually tough because Tua's back is pretty sore and also dealing with an ankle issue. I think the expectation he's going to try and play Thursday night, but it's not a lock just yet.
I think that Thursday night turnaround is going to be the tough part because if you wanted to trust Tua, if you picked up Tua in part like because you were a Aaron Rodgers or Tom Brady manager and you were thinking, hey, these two teams have the two top 5 in pass attempts for opposing teams. This could be a shootout. This could be a game with these wide receivers. But knowing it's Thursday, knowing that he's feeling that way, I feel a little bit more trepidation than I would have otherwise. So something to monitor. We'll see what happens.
And also probably what it means for both Tyreek Hill and also Jalen Waddle. Teddy Bridgewater, solid, serviceable backup quarterback.
Not the same.
Not the same as Tua, who deserves some praise for the way that he has played through the first 3 weeks of the season. Of course, Teddy is fine. Yeah. Not like I'm going to bench those players, but if you get a 12-point effort from one and a 15 from the other, as opposed to a 22 and a 25, that's just how the cookie crumbles sometimes.
Yep. All right. Another quarterback that we saw go down was Mac Jones. Stephania, what's the latest on him?
Obviously in a lot of pain, dealing with a high ankle sprain that's been reported to be severe. And the question right now is whether he's going to undergo surgery or not for this injury. And the only thing I would caution people is that the surgery, if it's done to repair the ligaments for a high ankle sprain, is not done to speed up the recovery. I think that's been floated out there. It is not. It is a question whether the ankle is unstable and requires surgery or not. So we will await that. But Mac Jones is likely to be out. I would expect 4 to 6 weeks, regardless of the approach. So I just want people to plan on that for the impact that it has on everybody else in the Patriots offense who depends on Mac Jones.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about both of the running backs, especially, pass catching back Ramondre Stevenson and the pass catchers, because Jacoby Myers has been a guy that if you've needed someone that is consistent, you would be able to count on Jacoby Myers so far this year.
Yeah, he's the only one that you can consider a weekly consideration, and he obviously was out in week 3. I think the saving grace here is that Jacoby Myers was not a vertical threat. He's not the kind of guy that does a lot of his damage way down the field. He is a guy that operates a lot out of the slot, so the types of throws that you're making to Jacoby Myers are not nearly as high octane as they would be if you're throwing the ball down the field to Cortland Sutton or Tyreek Hill or something to that effect. Second thing that should not be unnoticed is that Brian Hoyer, who's going to step in for Mac Jones for some number of games, what's his real name? Do you know the answer to this?
No. I love that is the question. That's not what I thought it was going to be.
I was not prepared for that to be the question.
Do you know the answer to this? Because it might change your perception of him as a player. His real name is Axel.
Stop it.
And he chose Brian.
His real name is Axel? Is it Axel Bryan? Or he just calls
one of the
himself
Patriots
Brian.
players, Matthew Slater, was doing an interview yesterday and was talking about contingency plans. And he was like, I've got a lot of confidence in Axel. And everybody was like,
who's Axel?
Did the Patriots sign someone we don't know about named Axel? And it turns out Brian Hoyer's real name is Axel, which... I mean, as far as
how do you get to Brian
goes,
from Axel?
I know. I'm like, dude, you had it right there. You had Axel waiting for your whole life.
That is a football name.
That is I don't know if that. I can't think of a reason why you'd pick Brian over Axel.
I want his middle name to be
But
Rose,
I will, you know how we now, when like obviously Darius Leonard has said he wants to go by Shaquille now, right?
Yes.
I am hoping and preparing for the possibility of Axel Hoyer saying he wants to go by Axel. And as far as people are concerned in this podcast, I'll only call him Axel.
Axel. Yeah.
Unless he like sends me a note that's saying like, I don't go by Axel at all. If Matthew Slater's calling him Axel, then I'm calling him Axel as well.
I just want to know because obviously his parents,
right,
did they originate the ayahuasca camp that Aaron Rodgers went to? Like, where did he get the name Axel? As far as like,
I'm not one to be able to talk about names. My name is Field. It's super weird, but I will say, totally it gives me like 5% more confidence in Axel because his name is Axel.
Yeah,
only 5%, but still, yeah,
it feels a little cooler when you're like, I'm going to roll out there with Axel as my QB this week. No big deal. All right, Stephania, let's talk about David Montgomery.
His dad's name is Axel too. He's just
Stop
texting us.
No way. Oh my gosh.
Do we know, like, was his dad like an
maybe
undefeated All-State wrestler or something?
Axel Jr. Because that's weird.
Yeah,
Axel
maybe.
Jr. doesn't have the same like.
Axel Hoyer Jr.
I'm starting to
It's
think
a lot
that
to
Axel,
live up to. Anyway,
Wow.
too. If his dad
Wow.
was like some stud athlete,
All right.
Axel,
I would have. By the way, I think one last thing to be serious here is, part of me says like, oh, backup quarterback, you'll run the football a bunch more. Maybe, I don't know. Like, I don't know if you can do that because the way the Patriots have been playing offense this year has been like a decent amount of shotgun and like get the ball out quick. Maybe a slight uptick for Damian Harris and Ramondre Stevenson, but they go to Green Bay this week. They play, I believe, Detroit the week after that. Like, those are two good offenses. Right. Packers are certainly work in progress, but Detroit, a good offense. Like, you can run the ball if you're staying close, but I think that's a little bit of an estimate, a forecast, if you will, that they're going to stay close in those games. You might have to throw the ball. So I wouldn't be surprised if Hoyer has a 28 or 30 attempt game on Sunday against the Packers.
Because of that. Yeah.
Axel.
All right. Stephania, David Montgomery unfortunately went down early in the Bears game. The Bears take on the New York Giants this week, which actually could be not a bad matchup. What should fantasy managers prepare for with David Montgomery?
Well, he's not dealing with one injury. He's dealing with two. And just the mechanism where you saw it was a little bit of friendly fire kind of got backed up and his leg rolled up on that mechanism. We see that happen where you end up with a knee and ankle injury from exactly that kind of force. Now, it can either be really bad, and usually if it's really bad for either the knee or the ankle, or it's mild for both. And that's what the Bears are reporting, that they're calling him day to day. Here's the problem. It is tough for a running back if you have an ankle and a knee that are at all bothering you to plant and cut, right? Yeah. It's bad enough when you have one joint that's affected, but when you have two, if you're not 100%, it does make it tough. I will point out, David Montgomery had a groin injury a couple of years ago, and way to go. And we thought that he wasn't going to play, and he actually played really well. So I have that in the back of my mind that maybe he could surprise us, but on the one hand, the good news is he escaped a major injury. The tough part is the injury that he has is hard for a running back.
Sure. We will talk more about his backup.
Might be more Khalil Herbert. Yeah, I was going to say they might lean on him a little.
We'll get into that with our waiver wire segment with Eric Moody here in just a moment. All right. Stephania, another running back, though, unfortunately left Sunday early. Dalvin Cook left the Lions game early. We'll talk about Alexander Mattison, I'm sure. But what's the latest on Dalvin Cook? As a reminder, he's missed multiple games every single year of his career.
Yeah, and many because of this same injury. This is not the first time he's dealt with this. He had a subluxation of his shoulder, which basically slips out of joint but goes back in place. You knew as soon as he took the hit, I think it is sort of why he fumbled the ball. He went to the ground, then he was holding his arm against his side. When you see a player instinctively do that, they're trying to brace for stability. They're protecting their shoulder. And knowing his history, thought that right away. Now, he has in the past worn a harness. I actually talked with Courtney Cronin yesterday, who's covered the Vikings for us because we used to revisit this injury over the past couple of years. And she remembered that he had played quite well when he had the harness. You know, he's accustomed to playing with it. Players don't like to wear protective equipment, so they think they're fine until they're not. And so I would say it's not out of the question that he could maybe play this week, but certainly they have capable backup in Alexander Mattison who could handle a heavier workload if there's any sort of issue.
I'm sure you call this, but last year when this happened to Dalvin Cook, happened on a Sunday, missed the following Sunday, but then played the following Thursday. And that was the game in which he had 205 yards on the ground and 2 rushing touchdowns. So the good news is that when he came back, it was seemingly without restriction. And if he plays on Sunday against the Saints in London, then I think I'm going to prepare for him to be maybe not exactly 100% of Dalvin Cook, but I'll still have him in my lineup locks, and I'll have Alexander Mattison as a guy that will play some, but the only way that he would have real fantasy value, I would think, would be if Cook ends up leaving the game again, which none of us can really forecast.
Yep,
Okay.
agreed on that. All right, we're going to talk news or noise in a second, but first, Field, help us pay some bills.
Geico asks, how would you love a chance to save some money on insurance?
I love it.
Well, of course you would. And when it comes to a great rate on insurance, Geico can help. Like with insurance for your car, truck, motorcycle, boat, and RV. It could even help with homeowners or renters coverage. Plus, add an easy-to-use mobile app, available 24-hour roadside assistance, and more. And Geico is an easy choice. Switch today and see all the ways you could save. It's easy. Simply go to geico.com or contact your local agent today.
The NFL action is in full swing here at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. We're talking touchdowns, big plays, and even bigger wins. New customers can bet just $5 on any NFL team to win and get $200 in free bets if they do. And if that's not enough, everyone can boost their winnings with DraftKings stepped-up same-game parlays. Right now, for every leg you add, you can boost your winnings up to 100%. With payouts bigger than ever before, why bet on football anywhere else? Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use the promo code FFF to get $200 in free bets if your team wins when you place a $5 bet on any football game. That's code FFF only at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Minimum age and eligibility restrictions apply. 21 plus in most eligible states, but age varies by jurisdiction. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Tennessee, call or text the Tennessee Red Line at 1-800-889-9789. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. Bonus issues, free bets. One early win token issued at opt-in. Moneyline bets only. Deposit and wagering restrictions apply. Eligibility and terms at DraftKings.com/football terms. All right, news or noise, a segment that you two, I believe, co-created on your own without the help of anybody else. Is that correct?
That would be accurate.
I think so.
That's the
Don't bother
origin.
checking the tape. That's the origin of it.
That is the origin story of that. All right, let's talk. Stephania, we're going to start with the Detroit Lions backfield, and I'm actually going to start with DeAndre Swift. There was a tweet that came out yesterday from our friend Tom Pelissero, was talking about DeAndre Swift and how he potentially could miss some time in the future. It's going to be a situation where I feel like when you're looking at DeAndre Swift, we've watched the last 2 weeks. He's been active, but he's definitely been limited in this offense. Jamal Williams has been fantastic in that role. Do you see DeAndre Swift? I guess I should say this. Are you worried about DeAndre Swift heading into week 4 with the way that he has been limited these past 2 weeks?
Yes, and because this is something else. You know, that's been his ankle that's limited him the last 2 weeks. Now he's got a shoulder sprain. They haven't gotten any more specific than that, but he has had an injured shoulder before, and that was a problem for him in the past. Not expected to need surgery. Well, that's great, but that can still be a problem. We've talked about with running backs. Anytime, you know, they're leading for contact often with their shoulders. So I think this is a real issue for him, and I do think he's going to miss time.
Yeah,
starting right now.
Dan Campbell sort of said it yesterday, right? Like Dan Campbell basically said, like, it'd be nice if we could get him through the bye week. And their bye week comes not week 4, not week 5, but week 6.
Yeah,
so
2 more weeks.
You're talking about the potential of not having DeAndre Swift back in your lineup until week 7. So that part's news, and so is Jamal Williams' role. I don't want to hijack what Eric Moody is going to say, so I'll just keep it simple here, is that as far as plug-and-play options go, Jamal Williams, one of the better backup running backs, and you can almost use air quotes around backup because he plays a lot, as it were. There's a reason why they assigned him last year to a 2-year, $7 million contract. Was good in Green Bay. I expect him to be good again for Detroit on Sunday. And as of right now, it would be a major surprise if DeAndre Swift plays on Sunday.
News for both of these players. I think Jamal Williams, touchdown vulture. If you have been a DeAndre Swift manager, you know Jamal Williams very well so far this year because he's been getting in the end zone, unfortunately. All right, let's talk about Alvin Kamara. News or noise on Alvin Kamara? Under 8 fantasy points in both of his games so far this year. He obviously missed week 2. Yeah. He's really struggled with this Saints offense.
Yeah, it's news. It's definitely news because there are a few things here. Is that, yes, the injury in week 2 may have limited him a bit in week 3, but what does that mean? Who is to say that he will just all of a sudden be 100% in week 4? The opportunities were good in week 3, which makes me think the rib wasn't that much of a concern. He still had, I think, 22 total opportunities in week 3. The problem is that, you know, for years, we had this Christian McCaffrey and Alvin Kamara tier where it was guys that were really good runners, amazing in the open field, but were otherworldly pass catchers. Alvin Kamara had 81, 81, 81, and then 80 catches to begin his NFL career over the first 4 seasons. Christian McCaffrey, as we know, has had 100 catches in a season, I believe, multiple times. Now these guys are being utilized more like Derrick Henry, which is a problem.
It's awful. So
that's why you're being drafted, or why you were drafting them for the upside of them catching 6 or 7 balls in a week fairly often. They're good runners. They're not great runners. And they're not great on the level of Derrick Henry or Jonathan Taylor or Nick Chubb great. It's a problem right now. And it's been this way basically with every quarterback besides Drew Brees for Alvin Kamara. That's concerning to me.
There may be more opportunity for them. Michael Thomas and Jarvis Landry are both hurt.
Yeah.
And there is a chance that neither of them plays this week in London, even though the team went straight away to London. So we shall see. Stay tuned. We don't have to dive into it just yet. But Alvin Kamara may be up for catching more passes, especially through the middle, if either or both of them is not available.
And Chris Olave, too, I hope.
Oh, please. Oh, yes, that would be easy. All right. News or noise on Justin Jefferson. 3 catches for 14 yards. I'm going to take this one. This is noise. I'm not worried about Justin Jefferson. Yes, it's been tough. These last 2 weeks was shut down by the Eagles. Darius Slay and Jeff Okudah looked fantastic on him. Not worried about it. We're gonna right the ship with
Against
Justin Jefferson. You don't need to. Well, maybe not against the Saints. Saints
gonna
with
be
a
tough,
Marshawn
no
Lattimore
doubt.
shadow.
I mean,
But still,
as far as what are you going to do about it?
Right.
I'm starting Justin Jefferson every single week.
Yeah.
And to that point, Stephania, Devontae Adams. Are you ever not starting Devontae Adams with the fact that he got 10 targets again last week?
No.
Yep.
He's got a touchdown every single week. These are high society problems. If
Right.
you're bummed about Devontae Adams, who's got 10 targets per game, more than that, and a touchdown per game.
Okay,
you'll take that.
So let's say that Devontae Adams is noise then, because I realize the production is
Noise,
low,
yeah.
but he has a teammate in Mac Hollins. Well, first, before we get to Mac Hollins, I think Mac Hollins in part happened because Stephania Hunter Renfrow was not there on Sunday.
Right. He was out with a concussion and never really looked like he was going to play. Obviously, we don't know because these things, it's a day-to-day assessment. But his status could influence what you think about Mac Hollins this week.
News or noise on the Week 3 performance of Mac Hollins, Field Yates?
News-ish. And here's the reason why I say news-ish is that if Hunter Renfrow plays, it's moot. I would not have any confidence in starting Mac Hollins on Sunday. I'm not even sure I have confidence in starting him right now. Nothing more than sort of like a deep league play. Here are the good things going for Mac Hollins is that he's been super busy over the past 2 weeks. And what we talked about coming into the season was that beyond Darren Waller, Devontae Adams, and Hunter Renfrow, it was razor thin. It's not like Mac Hollins is getting playing time over 2 or 3 other established wide receivers that we think deserve to be playing more. There's nothing right now for the Raiders beyond Devontae Adams and Darren Waller. So Mac Hollins could very well be an almost every down player. And this might sound like a little bit of a goofy thing to bring up. Mac Hollins is the team captain for the Raiders. Ooh. They love him. That was one, and it was not that I track every single player that was named a team captain, but I remember when that one came out, it was one of the few captain namings that generated conversation. And it turned, and what happened was the reporting was basically like, the Raiders love this guy. Josh McDaniels loves Mac Hollins. And as I've talked about in the past, Josh McDaniels, when he loves a player, I said Brandon Bolden situations, right? Which, by the way, Brandon Bolden has got more fantasy points than Alvin Kamara so far this year, right? So
don't want to hear it.
Coach
Mac Hollins
preferences
has
should
great
be
hair. Also,
great hair.
I'm looking at this picture.
Yeah, it looks tremendous. So that's why it's ish, right? Is that like a deep league? If Hunter Renfrow is out, I think beyond that, though, I would tread lightly.
I agree from that standpoint. Even if he is somebody we love this performance, at best, he's still behind Devontae Adams and Darren Waller.
And a tough matchup.
A tough matchup.
It's a tough start for Darren Waller so far this year.
Yeah,
Hasn't been lost on me.
All right, let's talk about these Packers wide receivers because Romeo Dobbs, we were talking about, hey, I need to see Aaron Rodgers, one of these Aaron Rodgers pass catchers, really establish themselves as the guy. We saw a couple guys, actually, Alan Lazard both and Romeo Dobbs, but Romeo Dobbs is the question here for me.
Well, hey, it helps to be on the field, right? And here's going to be the problem. Sammy Watkins on IR with a hamstring injury. Christian Watson with what Rob Domofsky reported for us is a new injury. This is different than the knee.
I said "eesh."
Oh yeah. Oh, yeah. I thought there was a word I missed it there. Yeah, "eesh" is good. But Christian Watson missed all that time in the preseason after the knee injury, the OTAs. This is now something that is different. I mean, if you're not out there, it's hard to develop chemistry with a quarterback who is looking for a rapport with a receiver to throw to them.
Romeo Dobbs, news.
Yes.
8 catches, 73 yards, and a
And a
touchdown
touchdown.
last week. Matt LaFleur called a shot there, saying we need more out of him. Preseason buzz has been real. We discussed this on Sunday night. It's a factor. It's a real thing here. They play the Patriots, which is, I would say, not a great matchup on Sunday. But it's
Could be
also,
worse.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, it's not terrible, but it's not great. I'd say
Yeah.
it's sort of like a neutral matchup here. So someone's got to catch passes. And right now it feels like Romeo Dobbs is about as good of a bet as there is.
And his
Yep.
name is Romeo, which
Which you gotta love.
Romeo,
Romeo,
Axel. We got some elite
wherefore
names on the
art
show
thou,
today.
Romeo?
All right, let's talk about Trevor Lawrence. Speaking of good first names,
Going right
let's talk
past
about
it.
Trevor. Yeah, I did go right past it. Well, because you went past the joke that I did earlier about.
Okay.
All right. 262 passing yards and 3 touchdowns this week against the Chargers. We've been waiting to see Trevor Lawrence take the
Yes.
next step, and this week looked nice. Stephania.
Yes. I think this is news. I think the Jaguars are here. They're real. You see what's happened with him and Doug Peterson. Trevor Lawrence had, with talent coming out of Clemson, we knew it. He needed the right infrastructure around him. I mean, I'm telling you, when I was at Jaguars camp, there was so much buzz about that. There was also buzz about Zay Jones, and now you're seeing that come to fruition too. But I just am so happy for Trevor Lawrence because the confidence is a real thing. We've seen it with Tua, and look at how he's starting to blossom. And now Doug Peterson giving it to Trevor Lawrence. This is news because I think there's more like this to come from the Jags.
Yes, this is news, but I think it's a better storyline next week, and here's the reason why. They play the Eagles on Sunday.
Yeah,
right now,
well-
it feels like that might be the scariest defense in the league to face at the moment, right? With the way they're getting after the quarterback. Or did so against Carson Wentz. Really good receivers as well. I thought about making the Jaguars just as like a whole, like here come the Jags, sort of the lead a field pass. I'm just a little concerned that maybe this week they fall down to
And
earth
they're
a little
at
bit, right?
Philly.
At
Yeah, that's
Philly,
yeah.
going on the road, it's going to be a crazy atmosphere. We saw this with the Commanders, right? 2 really good offensive weeks. They play the Eagles, and all of a sudden it's a wasteland. So, but I think it's news because Lawrence has been excellent. It's really one of the great stories so far this season as the Jaguars back-to-back thumpings over the Colts
Yes.
and also the Chargers.
Plus, I don't think we can overlook like the fact that there's a hurricane approaching Florida, creating a lot of issue. Now, obviously they play away, but there's real life impact. Families, displacement. Do you travel early? What's going on?
Yeah, the Bucs will be in Miami this week.
Yeah.
Jeff Darlington's already reported that the NFL, they have to. They're looking into scenarios. And if the game couldn't be played on Sunday between Tampa and Kansas City in Tampa, sounds like Minneapolis could be one of the teams, one of the host cities available. So we'll see.
All right, let's talk Allen Robinson. 2 catches and 5 targets for 23 yards last week. Here's the deal. Under 4.5 fantasy points in all 3 of his games.
Yeah.
This is news.
Not all 3, but in 2 of his 3.
Is that what I said? Did I say? Okay, you're right. In 2 of his 3 games. You have to see more than 5 targets in a game, though, Field Yates.
He had the 1 touchdown that helped him, and this is a running bit between he and Tyler Fulgham and Mike Clay. Yeah, I said the clock is ticking here on Allen Robinson. Right?
It's so frustrating because he's there.
He's there.
It's
but
the way they're calling the offense.
Yeah, it's
makes
just
me
weird though,
nuts.
right? Is that like, as I said this a million times during the preseason, so I'll say it once more here, is that like the Rams either going to get the steal of the offseason or they're going to have burned basically $50 million, right? Because
Silly.
and
Not a great matchup either.
Yeah, this week against the 49ers, I
not a great
really
matchup.
don't like Allen
but
Robinson.
But the thing is that like you're clinging right now. If you're keeping Allen Robinson, and I think he's a stash for 1 more week, I think it's because you're saying to yourself, he has had good opportunities into the red zone. He's, this is still a really good offense, even if it's been sputtering a bit out of the gates. Once they get past the San Francisco matchup, maybe better days are ahead. On the other hand, the lack of explosiveness, very apparent right now. Lack of volume, very apparent right now. It's Cooper Kupp. It's Tyler Higbee right now. I mean, and this is before they get back guys like Van Jefferson, who's currently on IR. He'll miss 4 games at minimum. He hasn't yet played this year. Like, it could be that later on in the season, Robinson takes off. It also could be that they have more guys available, like maybe Odell Beckham Jr. is eventually re-signed a month and a half from. I'm just saying. I mean, a month from now, right, or a month and a half from now, if he's signed and he's available for the last 6 games of the year, like the Robinson thing just may never happen for this season.
Allen Robinson, I feel bad for Allen Robinson managers in the same way that I feel bad for DJ Moore managers because there was a lot of expectation coming into this year. You know what I mean? And you used a draft pick on him that was supposed to be a starting roster spot on those pass catchers.
The expectation was justified because of the contract and what they did and where they brought him and the offense he was playing under. Like, there's no fault there in terms if you were selecting Allen Robinson for your fantasy.
I feel much worse for DJ Moore managers because DJ's good. DJ's awesome, right? It's not his fault. That's not his fault.
Rest of the season, would you rather have DJ Moore still over Allen Robinson?
I mean, I guess yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I don't know. Yes. My answer is yes.
Carolina.
My answer would be DJ Moore.
I still like him as
just
the
because
wide
I think
receiver
he's a
one.
much better player.
Yes, give me the guy that is still the guy in a Baker-led offense than the guy behind Cooper Kupp, because I just feel like everyone's going to get buried behind Cooper Kupp if Matthew Stafford doesn't have time to throw the ball.
Yeah, and it just the I don't know, like the Rams are an offense that I think knows what they are doing. The Panthers
not
right
doing
now
it well.
don't know what they're doing right now, right? And once they figure things
That's
out,
the comparison,
true.
then yeah.
well, I mean, in this case, we have to make a comparison, right?
right,
Because it's DJ Moore versus
Right.
Allen Robinson. So my answer would be DJ Moore, but it doesn't feel great.
They're both
Feel great.
disappointing.
Doesn't feel great.
They really are.
Yeah,
All right,
it
one
doesn't.
last guy. And this kind of sounds silly, but news or noise on Will Dissly.
I'll make this simple for you.
Yeah.
It's noise.
He scored in 2 or 3 weeks, Field.
He has 8 targets. 3
Okay,
games.
all right.
It's
noise.
noise.
All right, that's
Nice
fair.
player, though. Nice, sort of solid $8 million per year tight end player.
Yeah, I'm happy for him as a player,
Yeah.
but I'm
Wow.
not starting him in fantasy.
How great. $8 million a year player with 8 targets on the season. I should have been a tight end in the NFL, man.
Well, aren't you? I mean, you do play in Detroit.
I think we got sales stuff. We got a field. Why don't you, Stephania, why don't you read us a thing? I can't believe you're going to give away my secret identity like that.
Okay. Fantasy football season is here, and that means more of what you love. The teams, the rivalries, the stats, trash-talking friends. This season, you know your favorite players are hydrating with Body Armor Sports Drink on and off the field. Your favorite fantasy stars like Kyler Murray, Christian McCaffrey, CeeDee Lamb, they all rely on Body Armor to get them to the next level and perform at their best and give you the trash-talking points you need. Made with potassium-packed electrolytes, antioxidants, no artificial sweeteners, flavors, or dyes, and coconut water. It's a great time to grab some Body Armor Sports Drink for yourself. Body Armor is a great option whether you're playing ball with friends, hauling coolers to a tailgate, or rooting for your team. Body Armor Sports Drink, more than a sports drink. Now through November 1st, buy any one Body Armor product at your local convenience store, scan the QR code in store to enter to be one of hundreds of winners to receive $100 in DraftKings prizing. No purchase necessary, void where prohibited, open to residents of the U.S. 21 and older.
Football season is here. Nothing beats seeing your favorite team, the Detroit Lions, live. Not only does Vivid Seats have great NFL ticket prices, they are also the official ticketing partner of ESPN. And with Vivid Seats rewards, when you buy 10 tickets, you get the 11th free. Download the app or visit vividseats.com today. Vivid Seats. Life happens live. Receive a reward credit equal to the average price of 10 tickets purchased, excluding taxes, fees, and processing costs. See vividseats.com/rewards for terms and conditions. All right, it is time to bring in our buddy Eric Moody to set us up for the waiver wire. Eric, how you doing, bud?
You know what? I'm doing good. I'm sitting here watching the show, watching everyone talk about football, and I'm excited to talk about the waiver wire, but I'm doing great. Fully caffeinated, and as always, ready to rock.
Oh, fully caffeinated.
Eric got
is
the memo
key.
about the blue theme today,
That's
too.
right.
Oh, yeah.
It is well done.
Did
well
we,
done.
we did not do this on purpose. We just happened. Oh, we did this on purpose. No, we did. Yeah. All right, Eric, let's dive into it. Let's look at the week 4 waiver wire. If you need a quarterback and you're looking for one guy specifically this week, who is your top quarterback on the week 4 waiver wire?
Yeah, my top quarterback is Trevor Lawrence, and I did hear you speaking very highly of Trevor Lawrence earlier. You know, he's someone that's only rostered in around 51% of ESPN leagues. And one thing with the Jaguars is that they're just the second team in the Super Bowl era to win consecutive games by 24 or more points as an underdog in both games. And so I think Trevor Lawrence is happy right now. I would say he's as happy as Tom Cruise was dancing in the 1983 movie Risky Business with this new coaching regime. Doug Peterson has been phenomenal for this team, and he's actually making Lawrence's future really bright. And one thing with Lawrence, like he's averaged around, I think it's around 22 fantasy points per game this season. He's positioned for success with Christian Kirk, Zay Jones, and Evan Ingram. I think he's someone that can be viewed as like a high-end QB2 from week in and week out for the rest of the season, I'd say.
Yeah, and this week, we already talked about it, going to be a tough week potentially against the Philadelphia Eagles, but we have loved the way that he's played up until this point. I think a lot of promise going forward. All right, if you're looking for a running back, Eric, unfortunately, we had a handful of running backs go down with injuries earlier on in the week. Stephania already talked about those guys. If you need someone for this week, which backup running back are you looking at off of the waiver wire?
Well, you know what? It is all about Khalil Herbert for this week. So let's talk about Herbert. I know he entered week 3 averaging nearly a fantasy point per touch. He obviously went boom. Now, I'd say he went nuclear in week 3 with that performance. But when Montgomery was out last season, you look at Herbert, he averaged 23.3 opportunities, that's rushing attempts plus targets, and 15.4 fantasy points per game while playing 83% of the offensive snaps. And so I kind of look at it this way, Dopp. If Montgomery is truly out, he's inactive, he is not on the field, Herbert is a must start against the Giants in week 4. But let's say if we're in the multiverse where that scenario is where Montgomery is active, I still think Herbert is like an upside flex option. I'm like, the genie's out of the bottle, so to speak. He just has to be involved in his backfield because going into this season, the coaching staff felt like, hey, Herbert may be a better fit for our running scheme than David Montgomery. So I love Herbert this week.
Yeah, and if you are our resident Bears fan, Liz Loza, has talked about, if you're a Bears fan, you've known about Khalil Herbert for a while because he's somebody that behind David Montgomery looked really good last year when he got opportunities. Hopefully, if he gets more, he will be able to continue to deliver. All right, at the wide receiver position this week, Eric, who's the wide receiver you're targeting in week 4?
You know what? I've got to go with my guy, Romeo Dobbs here. He's someone that's only rostered in 16% of ESPN leagues. And it's a very intriguing situation because you got Packers head coach Matt LaFleur, who's like, hey, Dobbs will play a bigger role for us heading into week 3. And that's exactly what happened. You got Sammy Watkins, who's banged up, dealing with injuries. He's out. You got Christian Watson that's dealing with multiple injuries from what Stephania said. And so he's someone that can't be relied on. And you know Aaron Rodgers, he's not a fan of younger players who he doesn't have a degree of confidence in. So you know what? He met Dobbs halfway. And the results were glorious because you look at Dobbs with this performance, he became the first Packers wide receiver not named Devontae Adams to record 8 receptions in a game since Randall Cobb did it back in week 1 of 2018. And furthermore, Dobbs is also, he became the first rookie wide receiver to catch a touchdown pass from Aaron Rodgers since 2018. And so I look at this duo. It can only get better from here on out. Now he's got, we'll say Dobbs has Aaron Rodgers' attention. And I think the rapport and chemistry is only going to get better. Now, I know week 4, the Patriots are on deck, and that's going to be a challenging matchup. But I'd say Dobbs is someone that I can see as a weekly flex option, depending on who the fantasy manager has on their roster, of course.
Yeah, we've been waiting to see which wide receiver really establishes himself as Aaron Rodgers' go-to guy, right? And if we knew which one of those wide receivers it was, they would be potentially a weekly start for us because how do you not take Aaron Rodgers wide receiver 1 and say, good things can happen every time that you have them in your lineup. So love Romeo Dobbs this week as well. Let's talk one more at the tight end position. If you need one tight end for this week, who do you like?
I do like David Njoku. I think we all forgot that that they played on that Thursday night after the after the rest of week 3. It was a crazy week, but everyone remembers last Thursday night. I mean, Njoku caught 9 of 10 targets for 89 yards and a touchdown, setting a career high. And he's someone that, from a film perspective, I've always been, I guess, enamored by because he's someone that's, he's got the speed out in the open field to really outrun anyone. And, when he's in a contested catch situation, I'm like, he's dominant, just given his physicality. And I'm glad to see things finally come together for him because after Amari Cooper, I'm like, he was the second leading receiver for the Browns against the Steelers. Now, the Falcons are on deck in week 4. That's a plus matchup. And I've said it on the show before and in other places, considering how desolate the tight end position can be if you don't have like Mark Andrews or Travis Kelce. It's as bad as The Wasteland in the Mad Max film series. I like Njoku as a tight end 1 this week, a low-end tight end 1, but he's someone that you can put in lineups and feel very good about what the outcomes could be.
All right, let's quickly go through a few more players in case you're not able to get any of those top guys, right? You always want to get your guy, but you don't just put in one waiver claim, Eric, because if you don't get Khalil Herbert, then you're just stuck at the running back position. So if you can't get Khalil Herbert, what other running backs are you looking at off of the waiver wire here in week 4?
All right, I'll give you a quick rundown of running backs. I know you talked about Jamal Williams earlier. He's someone that's only rostered in 44.3% of ESPN leagues. I know you talked in detail about Williams, but I'm going to give you a stat which will really hit a home run on why you should prioritize him, is that over the course of his career, I know he's been part of committees, Green Bay with Aaron Jones, now he's with DeAndre Swift. I'm like, he's had at least 15 touches in 23 career games. Now, in those games, Williams has averaged 19.5 touches, 96.5 total yards, and 16.6 fantasy points. He's someone that can be viewed as a RB2, in my opinion. You got Alexander Mattison. I know you've talked a lot on the show today about Dalvin Cook and his injury. You got Mattison. He's only rostered in 37% of ESPN leagues. I'm going to leave you with the stat here. Again, I'm looking for home runs here today. And Mattison has started 6 career games when Cook has been inactive. In those games, he's averaged 23.3 touches, 115.5 total yards, and 20 fantasy points. If Cook is out, I'm like, he is a low-end RB1. I'm still comfortable using him as a flex option, even if Cook plays.
Yeah, I love both of those guys. Jamal Williams, to your point, through 3 weeks. DeAndre Swift is running back 5. Jamal Williams is running back 8 on the season. So if DeAndre Swift misses any time, you really like him. And Alexander Mattison, you already said, you know what Alexander Mattison is when Dalvin Cook doesn't play. You lock him into your starting lineup because he is going to deliver for you. All right, if Romeo Dobbs is not available, what other wide receivers are you liking off of the waiver wire as secondary options?
The wide receiver that is not getting talked about enough, and that is Zay Jones. Like, he's only rostered in 8.6% of ESPN leagues. And I know, like, on Sunday on the NFL bet show I do with Aaron Kate Dolan, I'm like, Jones was one of my bets for an anytime touchdown scorer, so I was smiling ear to ear to see him deliver on that. But he's a guy that's amassed 24 targets through 3 games, leads the team in receptions. I'm like, Lawrence is looking for him on short, intermediate routes, so it's a good thing. But I do want to bring all that together with the stat on Jones. So Jones has had 15 career games with 8 or more targets. Now, in those games, he's averaged 5 receptions, 56.3 receiving yards, and 14.5 fantasy points per game. So he's someone that's being overlooked. Don't make that mistake. If you don't get Dobbs, pick Jones up.
I agree with that. I still would be a little bit hesitant this week, understanding they're probably going to show up on the wide receiver cornerback matchup because those Eagles cornerbacks are really good. But when I look at the rest of the season, like in the rapport that Zay Jones has started to develop with Trevor Lawrence, you want to see that to continue to develop. All right, Eric Moody, anything else for the Week 4 waiver wire before we let you go? Because I know that we have so many other things that you're doing for us here this week. Anything else for the Week 4 waiver wire?
2 things really quick. Don't overlook Josh Palmer if he's available in your league. I know he's performed very well for 2 weeks in a row without Keenan Allen. But one thing with Josh Palmer, I would say the Chargers just need to get him more involved. Now, he's had 5 career games with 6 or more targets. In those games, he's averaged 55.6 receiving yards, 15.3 fantasy points per game. He's a great player to have as like your wide receiver 4 or 5 on your team. But last but not least, I'm a little disappointed, Dopp, because the Treylon Burks breakout party did not happen last week. I had the food that I wanted. I had everything ready to go. It just didn't happen. But I will leave you with this, is that even though he only had 2 targets, he did lead the team in routes run. So I think the key word with Burks is patience. If you have the space, pick him up. Things are going to look a lot better in the future. So I'll leave you with that.
Yeah, we watched Bobby Trees look pretty good last week, but Treylon Burks, obviously, early first-round pick, somebody that you know that they like. And also, Josh Palmer. I've been a Josh Palmer fan this entire offseason. Now he finally gets a chance, and Justin Herbert is dealing with a rib injury, which is the last thing you want. When Keenan Allen is out, I feel like we haven't seen more of him, but long-term, still like him as an option on the waiver wire. Eric, at Eric N. Moody on Twitter. Make sure you go follow him. Follow all of the daily notes that he does here on ESPN.com. Eric, thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you a little bit later on in the week.
No, sounds good. Until next time.
Until next time. All right, Fields, Yates. You know, it's almost lunchtime, and I'm getting a little bit hungry.
Yep, as am I. You know what that means it's time for? Our Little Caesars preview. Brought to you by Little Caesars.
Pizza.
Daniel likes Hawaiian pizza. I think it's good as well. Some people think that's controversial, but I'm with Daniel on this one.
No, you always put pineapple on pizza. All 3 of us are on that.
Yeah.
Right?
I agree.
Stephania?
Can be. Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Although Daniel did throw some red pepper flakes on his
Crushed red
pineapple
pepper.
pizza recently, which I thought might be a little bit too audacious for my liking. But let's talk football, shall we? We can vet that one at a later time. Let's get into our Little Caesars preview, and let's discuss Thursday Night Football. We have the Bengals playing host to the Miami Dolphins. Of course, that means a lot of things, including the fact that 2 quarterbacks taken in the top 5 of the 2020 NFL Draft will both be on the field, assuming Tua is good to go. And it sounds like he probably will be. Joe Burrow, the number one pick, the run to the Super Bowl last year, has been a more valuable fantasy player in the first 2 seasons for the most part than Tua. But this year, Tua is looking to take that mantle away from him and possibly Justin Herbert with the way that Tua has played at times this season, notably that fourth quarter against the Baltimore Ravens. But I can't wait to see these 2 high-flying offensive attacks on Thursday night. The Bengals, by the way, are debuting those sweet white helmets.
Oh, yeah.
On Sunday, and we mentioned this earlier on, one of 2 teams that is undefeated, the Philadelphia Eagles, plays host to their former head coach and Doug Peterson, who helped them to a Super Bowl win. He's now guiding the Jaguars, and there's a case that the best story of the early NFL season is the Jacksonville Jaguars, 2-1, back-to-back wins by 20-plus points for the first time since the year 2000. That is crazy in and of itself. But how much of the value is of Trevor Lawrence or even Zay Jones or Christian Kirk or James Robinson is mitigated by this really, really tough matchup? The reality is, while I'll have Christian Kirk in a lineup lock and James Robinson as well, beyond that, not so sure, because that Philadelphia defense is oh so nasty. But a great measuring stick game for Jacksonville on Sunday. And then finally, also on Sunday, who can't wait for Bills and Ravens? All of us, because the Ravens play host to the Bills. The Bills are actually favored in this game. But as we discussed yesterday, if you're taking a draft, if you're doing a draft right now, and it's the quarterback-only draft, the first 2 for fantasy that are going off the board are Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson. Probably Lamar number 1 overall. How much fantasy goodness do we see on Sunday when these 2 teams face off? We hope that the Bills will be healthier by then. Obviously, on defense is going to be a problem. Offense, it was a problem this last week as well. But between Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis, Dawson Knox and Josh Allen and Devin Singletary, plus Lamar Jackson, and also Mark Andrews, and also Rashad Bateman, and also a healthier J.K. Dobbins, there's the potential for this game to basically decide lineups in every single matchup in fantasy football on ESPN.com. I can't wait for that game on Sunday. If Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson combine for 90 fantasy points, I'll be a very, very happy man.
Didn't Lamar Jackson break some record in terms of fantasy points?
Yes, Lamar Jackson not only has the most fantasy points of the first 3 games of a season for a quarterback.
It's like 100,
ever.
right?
That according to Tristan H. Cockcroft. Yeah, it's like 103 points.
Wow.
He also has he has 82.3 over the past 2 weeks, which is the most by any quarterback in a 2-game span since at least 1950. I mean, basically name a cool record. Lamar Jackson has probably broken it in the past 2 weeks.
Was that a YA Tittle record?
We just don't know. Sometimes this data can be hard to verify in like the pre-modern era and then prior to 1950. So it may be that that's the most ever in a 2-game span. Just some of our data available here at ESPN.com does not go prior to 1950. That's one of the things about losing Matthew is that when Matthew leaves,
I was going to make that joke.
you don't have his Rolodex. Yeah. So we wanted to,
when they were back doing pencil and paper.
Yeah. So we have Matthew took all of his notebooks that he scribbled down 1941 through 50 stats in. So,
by the way, for people who drafted Lamar Jackson number 1 overall because they were like, forget the rules, I'm taking a quarterback. Good for you. Good for you. Who's getting the last laugh right now?
I know. You know what? I have Lamar in 3 leagues. The problem is
humble brag.
Hold on. No. Here's the problem. The problem is the problem is 2 of them are guillotine leagues. Right. So like my Lamar goodness could run out this, Lamar could be great on Sunday and everybody else could flop. And all of a sudden I'd be down to 1 league with Lamar. And I don't like that feeling. No. So,
I'm certainly rethinking my Jonathan Taylor number 1 overall versus Lamar Jackson.
No, you made the right choice there.
I love Jonathan Taylor. Yeah, I'm just, Colts offense is
tough right now.
One thing for me to close out this show, in watching the game last night, just coming back to Monday Night Football, it occurred to me that Christian Kirk and Kenny Golladay both signed a 4-year, $72 million contract. Yeah. And one of them is doing it right, and one of them is not.
And one of them was a trendsetter. I mean, didn't Christian Kirk basically
the
start the explosion of the wide receiver market? And I think people wonder, but you know what? Good for him. Good for him getting paid and playing well.
Yeah, first of all, I'll never be the dude got life-altering money. Respect, right?
Of course.
He secured generational wealth for the Kirk family. I don't know if he's married, if he has kids, but those kids are well taken care of. His kids are probably all good, right? But second of all, it's emblematic of the world that we live in, right? And this is, trust me, I'm very much a part of this. Is that because we have vehicles to express our thoughts instantaneously. We all get them off instantaneously. And how many things look dumb that were said 6 months ago or 1 month ago right now? I mean, there's a lot of things, right? That's just the way the world operates now.
It doesn't take a month for my stuff to look dumb, Phil. It happens a lot faster than that.
I'll be home in an hour to look. Some of the stuff I say will be dumb. But like Christian Kirk right now is sitting pretty. And if he keeps up his production, the value will be a steal.
Yeah.
But even if he doesn't, even if he's just like an 80 to 85 catch player with 1,000-ish yards and 5 or 7 touchdowns, totally reasonable contract.
Yep.
By the end of year 1, and by year 4, it'll probably be a drop in the bucket because Jamar Chase will be making $100 million a year.
Heck yeah.
Justin Jefferson, those guys. I mean, that's just the way the world works. I'm happy for him.
The Kenny Golladay thing is really puzzling to me because he was so talented and he was playing at such a high level, and then he had this bad injury. And I think a lot of the question when he went to the Giants was, is he really going to ever recover from that?
Yeah.
And they were comfortable that he was in a place where they could offer that contract, and he's just never looked like the same guy.
Ill-fated decision. That one, I think we all knew. Like Christian Kirk, I think when Kenny Golladay signed, it was kind of like, holy cap, like he's not even that good of a player. Christian Kirk was a solid player, but never a spectacular player. And you're like, wow, like you made. And by the way, quarterback play matters too.
Yes.
Trevor Lawrence better than Daniel.
Kenny Galladay's got a great agent, by the way. All right.
Yeah.
For that being said, week 3 rankings. It's going to be the 3 of us. We're going to have our friend Liz Loza join us. We're going to talk about all of the guys that you need to think about getting into your lineup and where do we have them ranked. We love you guys. Thanks for hanging out with us. We'll see you tomorrow.
Bye-bye. How do I get a Christian Kirk type deal?
I don't think that you can.
Didn't you just get one?
No.
Wow.
I mean, that's not what I heard.
Your sources must be bad.